Knowing what we know about segment bisectors, we can also find midpoints given certain information. So we're going to look at number 18 here, where it says we've got 2 points. Point E is at 0, 4, and point F is at 4, 3. If I was to draw that out, it would look something like that on a rough sketch. You could get graph paper to make it look a little bit nicer. But there's really 2 ways, given that information, to find the midpoint of that segment. In other words, we're trying to say, we know the midpoint's roughly right about there. What is that point in terms of an x and a y coordinate? Well, one way you can just look at this point without even graphing, and you can look at the x values, and you can average them. So what that means is, I'm going to say my x's are 0 and 4. I'm going to add those together and then divide by 2. 0 plus 4 is 4. When I divide by 2, I get 2. And then you can do the same thing for your y's. Your y values here, 4 and 3. You can say 4 and 3 added together, and when I average them, in other words, I'm dividing by 2 in this case, 7 divided by 2 is, we'll call it 3.5. You could call it 7 halves if you wanted to. And so that, what you just came up with now is your x value that was averaged and your y value that was averaged, and that gives you a new coordinate. So the coordinate that you now have is 2, which I got from here, 3.5, which I got from here. That is your midpoint, and if you look at it here, 2 over and 3.5 up is where we land. Okay, the reason that works graphically is because when we're finding the midpoint, we are trying to find that middle point along the x axis. So here's where my first point was, here's where my second point was. If I think of these 2 vertical lines that run through the x-axis, I'm trying to find that middle point, okay, which is essentially just the average of what I had here, 0 and 4. And I'm doing the same thing here when I average my y's. My first one at E was at 4. My second one here was at 3. And so 3.5 is right in the middle.